Hai, selamat sore teman-teman semua. Hi, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to another live session in Instagram with me, Nauval Yazid, the Festival Co-Director of the Europe on Screen. Sore ini saya akan pakai bahasa Inggris karena tamu kita bukan orang Indonesia, beliau juga tidak bisa berbahasa Indonesia. Namanya adalah Hiroko Takebe. Dia adalah organizer dari EU Film Days. EU Film Days itu adalah festival film Eropa di Jepang. So, this afternoon we will talk with Hiroko Takebe. She is the organizer of EU Film Days. That is the name for the EU Film Festival in Japan. Tapi sebelum kita mulai sesi ini, saya ingatkan lagi bahwa Europe on Screen itu akan diadakan, nih tanggalnya nih, 15 sampai 27 September di festivalscope.com. Jadi silakan pakai hashtag EoS 21 EoS 21 untuk mengetahui semua informasi terbaru mengenai Europe on Screen tahun ini. Minggu lalu kita sudah buka pendaftaran workshop untuk acting. Nah, mulai hari ini kita membuka pendaftaran workshop untuk sesi produksi film. Jadi kalau teman-teman yang sudah pernah memproduksi film pendek, film panjang, film dokumenter, film cerita panjang atau pendek, silakan daftar untuk mengikuti kelas intensif film production and development yang informasinya sudah bisa teman-teman lihat di posting atau di feed media sosial kami baik di Twitter, Instagram maupun Facebook. Oke, dan jangan lupa bahwa semua film di Europe on Screen bisa ditonton nanti tanggal 15 sampai 27 September masih di festivalscope.com, atau teman-teman bisa terus cek sosial media kami baik itu di Twitter, Instagram, Facebook maupun YouTube. Semua acara di Europe on Screen masih gratis, baik itu pemutaran film maupun sesi workshopnya. Jadi kalau teman-teman mau ikutan workshop, sudah bisa daftar untuk yang acting mulai dari minggu lalu. Kemudian workshop produksi mulai hari ini. Nanti di formulir tinggal dilihat persyaratannya, apa saja yang harus dipenuhi sebelum teman-teman bisa melakukan pendaftaran secara penuh. Okay, I can already see Hiroko from EU Film Days is actually here. Let me try to invite her. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Hiroko.
Hi, Nauval. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and I can see
Okay,
you
that's
as
great.
well. Great.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Good evening. It's already 6:30 in Tokyo.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Still light outside, but it's not such a great day today in Tokyo. There's been a storm. I don't know how it is. Yeah.
Okay. It's we did have light rain earlier, but it's been sunny most of the day here in Jakarta. So
Well, that's nice.
okay, so before we begin, Hiroko, perhaps you can introduce yourself to our viewers, your name and your profession.
Yes, hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Hiroko Takebe, and I work at the EU delegation in Tokyo. So I am in charge of the cultural events there, or management of various cultural programs, some of the cultural diplomacy files. And one of our largest projects that we've had for a very long time is EU Film Days, which is our EU Film Festival. And I don't know, should I go on or is it enough to start with?
It's okay. It's okay. How long have you been working in the EU delegation office?
Okay, so in the office, I've been there since 2002. So that's already quite a long time.
Oh, that's a very long time. Yeah.
It is. It's longer than the EU Film Days has been around.
Okay, and
But
since
I
two,
only started working. Yeah,
sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was wondering if it is since 2002 you are already involved with cultural events, or how is it going in the office there?
Actually, no, that's not the case. When I started working at the EU delegation, I was doing a different job, so I was not involved with the cultural events. EU Film Days itself started, I think, in 2003, but I was not
Okay.
part of the project. It was actually a much smaller event. It wasn't
Mhm.
really, the festival that we have now. It was a rather small event to begin with. And this went on for a few years. I only became involved much later. I think starting around 2009 or 10,
Okay,
and really more managing or coordinating the project fully since around 2011,
I see.
2011, 2012.
I see. Well, it's still pretty long time, so it's been 10 years now. It's been a decade.
It is. It has went by very quickly, but that's true.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, did you recall? I mean, even if you are not involved in the EU Film Days in the beginning, but you were already there when the first EU Film Day started. So, what made the EU delegation office there decide to have EU Film Festival back in 2003? Do you happen to know?
I don't know the exact details, but I do remember it was really a joint project between several member state cultural institutes and perhaps
Mhm.
some embassies. We have a very good working group with all the member states here in Tokyo, and currently, in fact, all 27 member states have embassy. Well, I mean, not in 2003, but
Mhm.
I mean, right now we have embassies of all 27 member states,
Mhm.
and even in 2003 we had quite a few. So I think it was really a joint project. Several institutes wanted to come together and do something, and they thought film was a good idea. And I think the idea was that everyone would bring one film, and we would show it at, again, not a large venue, but at one of the institutes. So there's the Institut Français or the
Mhm.
Goethe Institute. I think the Swedish embassy also had an auditorium that they provided, the Italian Institute, of course. So there are several institutes already with halls that you can do screenings, and I think that was the beginning. So it was really let's get together and show a few films, basically. And I remember going to see some of them in the institutes, which is very interesting. And but this is really extension of what the institute are already doing, because, as you know, it's very often that you have Italian films at the Italian institutes or French films at the Institut Français every now and then. And I think the idea was to do it jointly, and to actually show a film from a different country in one of the institutes. For example, the French film would not be shown at the Institut Français, but it would be shown at the Italian Institute, where the Italian film might be shown at the Swedish embassy. And that was the kind of beginning. So that's really almost next year. It's our 20th anniversary, and we've gone quite a long way. So it was a very modest beginning, I believe.
Yeah. And since you all mentioned that you are actually in charge of all cultural events there, I wonder how many cultural activities or events that the EU delegation office in Tokyo have every year. And in terms of comparison with EU Film Days, are they on the same level, or actually are there any special cultural events probably that are bigger in scale?
Okay, longest time, I think EU Film Days has been the biggest event that we
Okay.
were involved in. First of all, it takes place over quite a long period of time. We show, I mean, recently, for as long as I've been involved, we've been showing 20 films from 20 countries, over 20 countries, very often 25 or 6. And these are usually shown twice, so that's already 50 screenings, lots of events, and this usually goes on for about a month. And we've got lots of partners. So this, in this respect, it was, I think, the largest cultural project that we had since 2017. So these past 4 or 5 years.
Hiroko, I think we lost you a little bit with the connection, with the unstable connection. So if you can hear me, then just rejoin at any time. I think you mentioned about the EU Film Days being the biggest cultural event, and also the last. Oh, okay. I think there is a connection disruption. She left. I'm sure it's about the connection. Jadi tadi Hiroko sempat sharing tentang EU Film Days. Itu adalah salah satu, atau sebenarnya bukan salah satu, tapi acara kebudayaan terbesar yang diadakan oleh kantor perwakilan Uni Eropa di Tokyo. Okay, I think she's already back online. Let's see if we can be connected with her. Hi, nice to see you again.
I don't know what happened.
No.
I got cut out for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. It happens. So the last time, the last thing that you mentioned about before being disconnected is EU Film Days is being your largest cultural program in the office. But then you mentioned something about other events since 2017, and that's where we cut off.
That's when I got cut off. Since 2017, we started a literature festival, and this is also quite a large event now. Again, we started very, in a smaller scale. So at the first year, I think we only had about 10 countries joining, 10 member states. This has grown. So I think this year will be our 5th year, and we will have quite a few. It's not on the same scale as EU Film Days because I think it involves a little bit more inviting authors to talk about their books and organizing events. So it's not it's not in the same scale as a film festival, but it's also quite an interesting event. Of course, things both with the film and literature in the last year and a half, they have evolved quite a lot because we can't have real physical events, or we couldn't have physical events in the way that we used to, and a lot of it is online. So this has changed things a little bit, but those are our two, I think, largest events throughout the year.
I see. And well, since we are talking about film festival this afternoon, it's always nice to hear experiences, to hear stories about organizing film festivals. Do you remember things that overwhelmed you when you started being active organizing the festival in 2011? The things that you didn't think will happen, but then you only discovered while organizing the festival. Perhaps some examples, some details that you still remember?
I think, okay, some of the challenges I might say is that we, from 2009, have been working with a local partner, which the National Film Archive of Japan. They used to be called the National Film Center. Basically, they are a museum and they are an archive of film. They are the only one in Japan, actually, that has really an archive of historical films, Their curators are professionals in terms of film studies,
Yeah.
and we've been working with them. They also have a lovely theatre where they show films and they organize events. And EU Film Days has been partnering with them for almost, well, since 2009, so over a
Mm.
decade. I really got involved as we were starting to work with them. So moving away from just the small embassies or the institute halls into a fairly large centralized venue. And but I think one of the challenges that I remember in the early days is that they were very attached to film. I mean, obviously they're a film archive, and really the kind of we must have film in 35 millimeter went on
Uh-huh.
quite a long time, even after, for example, Europe started only sending films in digital format, and there was a long discussion about whether we you know, when do we go digital, how do we go from um, it's a little similar to recently. So do we watch online? Is there
Yeah.
streaming? But in those times, it was really, do we move from the 35 millimeter rule, the reels, to okay, so a DVD is not acceptable, but is a Blu-ray acceptable? Can we show, you know? And now it's mostly DCP, but at that time there was a lot of different formats. Some only used more in Japan, some used elsewhere, and all this quite technical information was quite new to me at the time. So this is something I do remember as a challenge. And compared to that, I mean, now looking at you know, how do we go from maybe physical screenings? Is it still important to have physical screenings, or do we stream online? This is it's a new, it's also very important, but it's I feel more manageable than I thought at the time.
It is. I think film comes in a, I don't know, smaller format. Yeah, I also remember the hassle actually carrying big bulk of films in 35 millimeters. And then, yeah, it was around 2010, 2011. There was a change in digital format to DCP, and we at that time we thought that the change would come gradually, and then it wasn't. It happened very fast
It happened
within,
very fast.
yeah, with less than a year. So many film producers or film rights owners, they started not wanting to send 35 millimeters anymore. In just less than a year, they started sending DCPs or Blu-rays. Yeah, it was a challenge.
And I think in that respect, Japan took a longer time to transition
Oh, I see.
theaters.
Okay.
So this was one of the, you know, it went on for a couple of years, or maybe 2 or 3 years in Japan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when we had to have this discussion. So, you know, how do we change? Is this possible? That was one of the challenges. There are others, but
But before pandemic, in 2019, did you still screen in 35 millimeters, or is
we
now
had
it's
very few.
completely DCP?
I think in 2019 or 2018, those were the years, I think, when we had zero films in 35 millimeter.
Hmm.
But until about 2016 or 17, there were some, and some of them,
Okay.
partially because there's always an issue here about subtitling. And
Mm-hmm.
if the films had been released in Japan, of course, there would be a copy somewhere with
Yeah.
the subtitles. So
Mm-hmm.
occasionally there would be some, you know, we would have one in our lineup that was already distributed, and we would have to go and rent them or borrow them. And that would be really the copy that they would have. We wouldn't be able to get a new copy or produce new subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something.
And speaking of subtitle, um, do you like hire or engage with professional subtitler to do the subtitling for films that have not been subtitled in Japan yet, or how is it going actually with the subtitling?
One of the biggest challenges that we continually have, um, because subtitling in Japan tends to be quite expensive, and it is
Mhm.
a, I mean, I say expensive compared to international rates.
Yeah,
Um, I can also say on behalf of the people who work in the industry that they do an extremely fine job, and they are quite meticulous. The subtitling of films is an art really that has developed
yes.
um, in a way that I think maybe when you see films subtitled in other languages, for example in English, or or some of the subtitles that you might find online, you really see the difference that these people have put in quite a lot of work, and there is a standard. On the other hand, of course, this comes with a cost, and
Yes.
we've always found this quite prohibitive when we want to subtitle new films. I think we have to look at 4 or 5,000 euros per film. And because we don't have a budget really just for subtitling a lot of films,
Mhm.
we rely on the member state providing the film to do this. Some of them are able to do to finance this. Some aren't, and of course we have to find a compromise. In the last year or two, we've had a few films provided from the consortium in the EU to help to support film festivals. This year, I think we managed to get. Every year we do have a number of films that are newly subtitled for our event, and then the others we try to show. I think in 2019, which was the last physical festival we had
Yeah,
before the pandemic, we did have all the film subtitles because it was a combination of films that had already been released or films that were then newly subtitled. But this is rare. We've always had a few films each year, which in the end, unfortunately, we did not have subtitles for.
I see.
How is it in Jakarta? Do you,
So for us, we do not provide Indonesian subtitles because seeing films with English subtitles is very common here. We only, well, before pandemic, we had an outdoor program. And for this outdoor program, yes, we provide Indonesian subtitles. But then for outdoor program, we only screen European films that have been acquired by local distributors as well. It's an outdoor program, so we can only screen family themed or family oriented films, the kind of films that are usually acquired by local distributors. So these films have already been subtitled for either for their theatrical release or home releases, either in DVD or TV. So we just borrow them, like rent from them, pay the rental fee, but we don't have to pay the extra fee for the subtitling. But for films that are in the what you call that, in the non outdoor program, like the core section of the festival, we just provide with English subtitles.
okay, well that if we were able to do that, of course, it would make a difference. But unfortunately, I think the audience here expects to have the subtitles, and and truthfully, I think they would find it difficult to follow the films if they didn't. We do have a few challenges every year. I mean, if we show a film with the English subtitles, I think we get um, best 40 or 50 people who come along to go and
Mm-hmm.
watch it, which is nice. But I think this is really a very small section of the people who
Mm-hmm.
would watch it if it was subtitled.
I see. And you mentioned earlier about the member states' participation when it comes to providing subtitles. So I would like to know how is the partnership with these member states? Do they provide films? Do they clear the films on their own? Or on top of that, they also provide additional financial support for the organization of the festivals?
Okay, in our case, actually, the member states are basically the main organizers of
I see.
so we are jointly organizing the festival together, which is why, you know, I've mentioned that I'm coordinating the festival, because really each member state has a stake. They provide the film. They often choose the film.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have a discussion, but basically we ask them to propose a film, and then we look at the
Mm-hmm.
lineup together with our partners at the National Film Archive. We rarely, I mean, it's in terms of curation, we rarely reject a film that has been
Mm-hmm.
proposed. So we can, you know, you can almost say they choose the film, because they do make a selection, they propose it. They're responsible for actually bringing it over, clearing the rights, getting subtitles. And I think this is the way that we've been managing I mean, as I told you in the beginning, it started really with a few member states coming together, bringing their own films. So I think this is the way it's evolved. And there had been a few times in the past where we looked into maybe moving to a more curated festival.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really quite an issue, but because I think everyone was very involved in already kind of making the selection, providing a film, and this seemed to work well. And over the years, I mean, initially there were some people who said, actually, you know, the selection could have been better if you had someone to curate it. Because of the number of countries involved now, and the fact that we have basically 26, 27 who
Mm-hmm.
all want to provide a film, it's become it would be difficult now to actually say, oh, actually we don't you know, want a film from you, or we don't. I mean,
Mm.
it's very inclusive, and we find that the audience appreciate this. So it is a kind of compromise, and you know, we're always looking for ways to make it better, to find a better lineup, or to provide some kind of guidance. But it's really
Mm-hmm.
we rely entirely on the member states to actually provide the film. So therefore, I think it goes. You know, it's natural that they also have a say, and then they're not just told you must provide this film. They also have a say in the selection of the film, and this is something that I think maybe is a little bit different from some of the other EU film festivals, where you do
Mm-hmm.
have an organizer and a
Yeah.
curator, and there are obviously merits, advantages to
Sure.
having that. But it's you know, we're looking into ways to improve our lineup,
And
but also keeping everyone happy.
of course, that's one of the biggest challenges, you know, to keep everyone happy and satisfied with the selection. Do you limit the number of films that they can propose? Like one member state just provide one or
It's
two
basically
films?
one film per member state, but
Okay.
if they have a reason to provide one more, for example, if one country says, actually this year we have a special anniversary of a certain film director, and we want to provide something else,
Mm-hmm.
or in the past we've had, for example, because the member states are also involved in inviting guests,
Yes.
to say, well, can we show another film by the same director, because we have the rights to that too, and you know, it would just help because he's here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a few in the past, few cases in the past where we had what we call like a special screening, and we you know that does not limit the we don't limit the number of films there. So I think, you know, it's not strictly only one per member state, but based on that's the in principle it is. Plus, you can have a special program if there is a reason to do it.
Mm-hmm. And in the past, before pandemic, how long is the festival was
I
held?
think it's generally been about a month because
Okay.
our partner, the venue, always screens each film twice. The special programs
Okay.
may be only once, but if it's in the regular program, then they're always shown twice. They have afternoon and evening screenings, and we've sometimes also done 3 screenings a day, but then it's very busy. So it's either 2 or 3 screenings a day in that, and then there's one day of the week that they are closed. So, I mean, with a full program, I think it's generally between 3 and 4 weeks. Then we also have, for the last 5 years, we've also had screenings in Kyoto, in another city.
Yeah.
So there, and we try. Again, it depends on the format of the film, but if we have a physical, say a Blu-ray disc or something that needs to be then transported, we can't really show the films at the same time. So with DCP, it's a little bit easier, but depending on the format of the film, so they don't always overlap, which means we may start the film festival in Tokyo, maybe a week or 2 weeks earlier, and then go on to in Kyoto. There is a bit of an overlap, but then it ends a little bit later there. We've also had screenings in other cities. We didn't in 2019, but in 2018 we had in Hiroshima. And there had been years where we tried to do mini kind of festivals or mini events in other cities. So maybe just a week in another city, or just a weekend somewhere. So it depends on the year, but I think 2019 it was 2 cities, and this year again it was only 2 cities.
Okay. And I'm always curious about the film going habit, or how audience reacts to films that we program. Do you find any differences in audiences in Tokyo and audiences in Kyoto, and 2018 audiences in Hiroshima? How do they react to the films that you chose?
I think in Tokyo and Kyoto, there's not that much of a difference. Those are both very big cities. There's a metropolis. In Kyoto, people not only come from within Kyoto, but also Osaka or Kobe, in that whole area. Kyoto has a lot of students. It's a city that there's a lot of universities, and I thought perhaps, we initially thought maybe more students would come and see. Currently, that's not really the case. The kind of people who come to see the films are more or less the same in both in Tokyo and Kyoto. I think in Hiroshima and a few other cities, it's slightly different. For one thing, I think the number of films, the European films that get commercially distributed, don't always make it to these cities. So in Tokyo and Kyoto, you're more likely to see people who are interested in the new films, the ones that have not been shown before, the ones that have not been distributed, even though there's very little information about them in advance. They're more likely to draw an audience, whereas other cities, I think films that have done the commercial run, that have been in the theaters, but maybe have not come to that particular city, or even if they have, it's very easy to miss them because they don't have a very long run. They may be playing in 1 or 2 small theaters somewhere. So I think we found that in cities other than Tokyo or Osaka or Kyoto, the kind of more traditional, the commercially distributed films are more popular. And of course, subtitling, if you show a film with with only English subtitles in say a small city, this is going to be a big, this is going to be a problem, because you'll have maybe one or two people coming to see the film.
But has it? I mean, did you ever experience that in these small cities?
Well, one or two is I think maybe an exaggeration, but I think we have in the past had very small screenings, for example, in Fukuoka or Okayama, and also in a museum or at a university. And of course, in a university, you may get more students who are interested in seeing, say, an English subtitled film, simply because they are part. They may be studying something about the country or about the language, but still, they're not a huge success in terms of number.
I see. And then, sometimes we also talk to audiences. Where we also have traveling here in Indonesia. Sometimes we talk to audiences to find out about the kind of films that they like. So did you ever take suggestions from audiences about the kind of films that they want to see, and then perhaps you bring it up to member states to look for certain kind of films that fit the descriptions?
Well, actually, what's quite interesting is I think that because we have quite a large number of films, we see there's a bit of something for everyone type of program, because there are people who only come to see the animations, for example, and we have maybe 2 or 3 animation films each year. Some years less, some years more. And I know that there are people who are really interested in coming to see the European animations.
Yeah.
There are people who are very interested in films from countries which are usually not shown in Japan. So the Estonian or the Lithuanian films are quite popular, because otherwise you rarely get to see them.
Nice. Okay.
Films from countries, basically some of the Central or Eastern European countries that are less shown, less distributed. Then there are people who want to come and see something with a big name. So if they've seen the direct name of the director before, that's always popular. So it's very hard to say, which is, I mean, when we do audience surveys, when we talk to people, it really depends. And one of the questions, of course, that we always get is, or even from say friends, which do you recommend? And of course, if you have a lineup of say 25, 6 films, they're not going to go and see all of them. So they will say, which is the best one, which is the most interesting. And of course, we have to say then, well, what kind of films do you like? What do you usually watch? What are you interested in? And I think basically our style has been really, there's a little bit a very different style. So there's something for everyone. I'm sure you'll find something that you like, and maybe you'll stay and watch the next one and find something that you didn't think you'd like, but you discovered as part of the festival. So that's something that is one of the characteristics of the festival that we have.
And I just want to know, has there been cases where when you were surprised that when you program the festival and then you think that this film will be popular among audiences, and then at the end of the festival you discover that, the film is not popular, and then some other films that you think will not be popular, then turns out that audiences like it. Maybe you can give some examples.
Okay. Actually, I have not really been surprised in a negative sense. I don't think we've ever said, we didn't think this film would. I mean, we thought that this would be really popular and it wasn't. but we have been surprised in the other way, in that you know, some films that we didn't really expect would be that popular.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can think of it. We just finished our festival this year, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, my mind is on the program for this year, and it's hard to go back
It's okay.
to other years. This year, what was interesting, and again, this year we had a slightly special, or you know, unconventional style, in that we had to postpone our physical screenings for about a month
Okay.
because of the rising number of infections and the state of emergency. And in the end, we did have it, but it did not start in May as we planned. We had to move it
Mm-hmm.
back to July. On the other hand, we had planned to have an online version running at the same time. And so the online version went ahead, and this went on first. And then after that, we had the physical screenings, which I think was interesting. It was not what we had hoped for, because I think what we wanted to do is, you know, really to have people come to the screenings, and then
Mm-hmm.
say also, well, you know, if you missed it, or you can't come, or you don't want to come because it's, you know, you're afraid of getting COVID, you can also watch it online. But unfortunately, because we had the online screenings first, um, we are not entirely sure if this affected or not the people coming to see the films at the venue. But one surprise I think that we had this year, and this is only for this year, is that for the online screenings, we had a certain number of films, about 10 films, which were the same as the ones that are being shown in the theaters. So these were,
Okay.
you know, offered both online and off or physically. And then
Yeah.
we also had, thanks to Valerio's group in the consortium for offering the film festivals, we also had a number of films that were provided just online, and these were only subtitled in English. And
Mm.
I think I can actually say I was surprised that these films were more watched this year than I expected.
Oh, that's nice.
So again, there is a large difference between films that are um, subtitled in Japanese, and of course these were really popular. So we, you know, we had the maximum number of views for one, two, three, four of them, and
Yeah.
actually also close to 400, so 300 and something for a few more. But
Mm-hmm.
and compared to that, of course, it's much less. But I had really not expected as many people to watch the English subtitled films. But we see
Mm-hmm.
that there's a certain number of the audience who, of course, it helps that they were free of charge, so
Yeah.
it's easy to give it a try.
Yeah.
But there are more people watching those. One film that surprised me was the Bulgarian film, and this was actually provided by the Bulgarian embassy. So we had this
Mm-hmm.
shown in the theater as well as online.
Yeah.
And due to budgeting difficulties, this was only shown again with only English subtitles. But the online version actually was quite popular. So this I think got over 300 views, which we didn't expect.
Mm.
Um, so I think it really depends. And the topic of the film was very pertinent to. It was about someone who actually installs a lot of hidden cameras and spies on his friends and neighbors. So
Yeah.
maybe it was, you know, the topic was something that a lot of people now at home are thinking about and were
Mm-hmm.
interested
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that was a surprise. The other films, I think, more or less, the new ones that were interesting, that had some kind of relevant theme, or an actor or someone, a director whose name had been, introduced before in Japan, these are always popular. So that was more as expected. But I think overall we did all right.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to say because there are many reasons for not actually wanting to go to a theater or not going
Mm-hmm.
to see a film
Mm-hmm.
when the country is, or the city is in a state of of emergency.
Yeah. So in terms of number of audience watching online, so this year you actually see the increase compared to last year?
Um, yes, yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, but the format is quite different because last year we did not organize the online festival on Festival Scope. We had a local partner,
Okay.
and they did charge for the films. It was
I
not a
see.
very high
Okay.
fee. It was a very low fee. You could buy a package of 3 or 4 films for I think 300 yen or something. So
Mm.
you know, extremely low fee, but it was not free. That was one
Mm-hmm.
thing. The second thing is, I think in the last year, uh, I don't know how it is in Jakarta, but around, say, a year ago, less people were accustomed to watching films online. And, even though Netflix had started and Hulu, it was only a certain number of people younger people who were watching these services. And I think more,
Mm-hmm.
and there was still a large number of people saying, "Oh, a film, I wouldn't watch it on the internet." And I think within
True.
the last year, this
Yeah.
has changed quite a lot. So
I agree. And it was, well, we also have like Netflix and other streaming platforms, but people are still not used to the idea of having an online film festival. Like it's a foreign concept. Like how do you attend a film festival if it is online? And also for us, I mean, we couldn't imagine organizing an online or virtual film festival. And earlier, last month, we had a meeting with Festival Scope, and the Festival Scope team shared actually those who started watching or who started attending online film festivals. They are not actually they don't belong to the common type of people who are used to watching series or films on the streaming
yeah,
platforms.
that's
they,
very
they have like
interesting.
they have like an acquired taste of films that they do not see in these platforms. That is why they are willing to learn to enjoy the virtual festival. So yeah, that's one of the discoveries that we find in
That's
the
that's
kind of
very
audience.
interesting. If I might just say, because until last year, until 2019, our festival is usually kind of end of May to June, maybe July.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly in June. Um,
Okay.
in May, the one of the largest film festivals in Japan is the Italian Film Festival, and this is quite a large affair. It's I think there is a proper commercial trade interest to sell Italian films, so it's always
Mm-hmm.
a rather large festival. But we've always had a kind of similar audience. So the kind of people who would go to an Italian film festival in May would also come to our festival in June. Then they would go to the French Film Festival in July. And of course, if there are others, some years there's a Swedish or a Polish film festival. But the Italian, French, now we have the German. These you see quite an overlap in the audience. And so we
Mm-hmm.
used to always, put our flyers at the Italian Film Festival, and people would pick them up and then come to our festival. What I saw this year is that the Italian Film Festival went online, and they had an
Mm-hmm.
online version. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
they had to cancel their physical festival. They were initially scheduled to have both, but I think the physical screenings were all cancelled in the end, and they only had the online festival. But I saw so many people saying, oh, you know, it's very busy now because I have to watch the Italian Film Festival online, then I have to watch EU Film Days. And so the kind of similar audience who watched the films in the theaters before have now kind of moved online, and that you know, they're trying to make the most of their time, looking at the schedules, figuring out when to watch which. So this is interesting, and I think it coincides with what you just mentioned, that it's the audience or the viewers who have acquired this taste for interesting films or European films seem to be kind of a similar set.
Yeah. Hiroko, we already received some questions from our followers who posted questions in the question box. First questions, the question is, do you do any censorship on the films that are being screened, or censorship is only for commercial cinemas or television?
We do not do censorship on television and commercial films. There is a body of who do actually look at the films and of course give the ratings or approvals. So far, we have not really censored anything. I think one of the discussions when we looked at the films this year was that it might still be good to announce what the rate, you know, how what if something is for above 60, what's the rating, R16 or something, that in the original country, that we may put this in our promotional materials, because sometimes people are surprised. We've generally done this as a cultural event, and so we've kind of left this this question of the censoring or the rating up to the viewer's discretion. But I think what we are going to try to do is provide some information saying, you know, this may contain some kind of material that perhaps you don't want to bring a child to. But this does not limit our ability to screen any of the films. Of course, it goes without saying that because the member states, it's mostly embassies who are involved, where they do also have a certain level of tastefulness to the choice.
True. And then, well, it's actually related to the next question. Do you program kids section in the festival?
We don't have a section because it depends on the lineup of the year. If we find that several of the films are indeed suitable for families or children, we may organize them and say these are the films that we recommend for children. But until this year, we didn't actually group them. I mean, we did provide information saying this is a comedy, this is, you know, this is a family film, this is a thriller, but we didn't actually group them into these groups. Last year, we found that when we did it online, because we sold the film, the platform wanted to sell the films in kind of packages. So we did, you know, packages of 3 or 4 films, and we found that this is quite popular. So this year, when we introduced the films, we actually arranged them into kind of groupings. So we'd say, you know, this section is films about youth or youth in Europe, and this film this is actually a number of films that are kind of hardcore thrillers or crime films. And so this year we didn't have a category specifically for children. I think we had 1 or 2 films that were suitable for children, but one of them was an animation, but then we put that together with another animation which was actually not for children. So we'd say, you know, these are animation films this year. So this year we did not really have that particular section, but we may in some years.
I see. And the next question is, what do you think are the differences between Japanese and European filmmakers in creating their films? Of course, based on your observation of what you've seen
In
so far.
creating the films, I think a lot of the European filmmakers, maybe it's also the way that the films are produced.
Mm-hmm,
It's there's a lot of co-production in Europe, as you know, and the
mm-hmm,
films are maybe produced in one country but are funded by other countries, or they're more international productions. Partially, this is the
mm-hmm.
way the EU also supports the filmmaking industry,
Yeah.
that you have
Mm-hmm,
a much more connection with other. In Japan, I think domestic films are really domestically produced for a domestic audience, and
mm-hmm,
this
mm-hmm.
is there are a few filmmakers that are working internationally, but these are more
Mm-hmm.
the exception than I think a lot of the films are really uh, domestically produced with
Mm-hmm.
domestic, you know, Japanese crew staff for
Mm-hmm.
a Japanese audience. So this is
Yeah,
this might be one of the largest differences that I see.
I see. Our next question is, are there any themes that are absolutely not going to be screened in the EU Film Days? Any topics or themes?
Topics or themes? No, I don't think so. Well, I can't really see anything of that effect. If there are films that are, for example, racist or I mean,
Mm,
anything that's really offensive, we don't really take that
mm,
kind of stance. On the other
mm,
hand, even films that are controversial, that provide some discussion. And I
mm-hmm.
know that often embassies prefer to show films that show their country in a positive image. But this is not always
Yes.
the case. I mean, sometimes we get films that don't always show the country in its best ways, that actually show that there are problems or there are difficulties, and maybe
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
problems are universal and something that everyone around the world can
Mm-hmm.
relate to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's there's no really I mean, it also depends on the person. Of course, there will be
Yeah.
occasionally someone who says an ambassador, or someone who says, "Oh no, we can't show a film that that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't show us in a very good light." But
Mm-hmm.
very often it's we really look at I think it's the artistic merit, and we would not show a film that is a terrible film, obviously, but
Yeah.
that goes without saying.
And finally, Hiroko, we always ask this to all our speakers. If you could just, you know, recommend three European films that you love, that you recently watched for all our viewers.
Very recently watched. Oh, okay.
Or maybe not recently watched, but the ones that you love the most.
Oh, should have thought about this. Let's see. Well, I'll have to really pick something out of a lineup recently, because
No problem.
and some of them may also be on screen in Europe on screen in September. I don't know,
Probably.
but um, very 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 likely. What did we have this year? Oh, that's a difficult question though. I really
Okay.
Well, if you have this Spanish film Buñuel and In the Labyrinth of the Turtles, I'm not sure you do. It's an animation.
We
This is
did
really
screen that
interesting.
last year. Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah.
screened it last year. Okay.
Yeah.
This is quite interesting, and you know, if you haven't seen the films of Buñuel, it gives you an introduction. If you have, then you kind of see, and you know, I do like some
Mm.
of, actually, not all of them, but the Buñuel films. So this is
Hmm.
interesting to have this year in our lineup.
Oh, great.
Um, there are a few others. So let me see. Apart from, oh, I'm sorry. This is
It's okay. So at least we got one recommendation from you. Anyway, I think we've come to the end of our session, Hiroko. It was very great talking to you. I mean, I, to get a glimpse of your festival in Tokyo that you've been running, that has been going on actually for 20 years, and you've been involved actively for the past decade. That's great. So thank you so
thank
much for your
you.
time.
No, and
Yeah,
thank you. And you know, I'd love to hear more about Europe on Screen. So I'll tune in to some of your other sessions, and
sure.
hopefully we'll get a chance to speak again.
Yes, yes, and looking forward to meet you in person soon when
I
this
hope
whole
so.
pandemic thing
When we
is
can all
over.
travel.
That's true. That's true. In fact, one of the last countries that I visited before pandemic was Japan. I was in Tokyo at
Oh,
the end of 2019. So, I mean, little did I know that
of
the end of
course, really.
2019 and like the next year we couldn't travel as freely as it was. So,
No, and I've always wanted to go to Indonesia, and I've never managed. So I think, you know, when we're able to do that, I'd love to do.
sure. Okay. Thank you so much again,
Thank you.
Hiroko.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.